Hope you're all doing well out there. Welcome to episode 1 of James and the Giant Speech. I'm James. Today we're going to be going over why I think right-winged populism doesn't exist, and maybe in brackets anymore. Why I had this thought randomly the other day as I was driving to visit my grandma, and I was listening to Dave Smith. I actually really enjoy Dave Smith. He's like half libertarian. Oh, not half libertarian. He's half comedian, half political pundit, whatever you want to call it. He's really smart. He knows his stuff. He alluded to earlier is independent. I enjoy listening to him. He has good takes on, Israel and, forever wars and our involvement in the Middle East, Venezuela, all those things that, we don't really like. He voted for Trump, which I thought was very, very strange. A little bit of this podcast is going to be, kind of asking myself why he would do that if I think he's such a smart, intellectual person when it comes to politics. A lot of people that, I think are smart and intellectual voted for Trump. Didn't matter if they were independent or Democrat. They just kind of believed what he was selling. And I'm going to talk about that as well. Which kind of confused me. So if you're one of those people, comment below, what did Trump say to really get you hook, line, and sinker to vote for him? And which one of those things has he not done? He hasn't done all the things that he was promising in the campaign. But I have a couple clips here from Dave Smith's last episode, The Populist Moment. So I'm going to defend my thesis here in why I think right-winged or, the right have never had a populist moment. Maybe they did for a split second. And this is coming on the heels of the woke culture emerging on the left. And that's really the only moment that I thought they even had a semblance of what you could call populism on the right. And I'll explain why. Before I go into that, I'm not Republican, I'm not Democrat, I'm not Libertarian, I'm independent. I'm really just looking for objectively good ideas to help the working class. And the past, I don't know, since I've been alive, really, I'm 36, every single thing I've seen mainstream in the news, people getting elected, presidents, Congress people, all this stuff, they're real neocons. They just want the status quo that has been happening my whole life, outsourcing everything we can. As soon as it was a good idea to send jobs overseas in order for, companies to save a dime or whatever on selling their product, as soon as we, outsourced all of our labor overseas, because it was, apparently a better idea to make it in China than ship it all the way back here and sell it. As soon as that happened, we really should have taken a step back and been like, okay, really, what are we doing here? What policies led to mass layoffs just for cheaper television and electronics? Because that's really the only good we've ever seen from it. Yeah, you can buy a TV for, cheaper than ever now. Not anymore, really, but back in the day, that was certainly true. While the price of healthcare and education has gone up, skyrocketed and stuff like that. And although I'm not cheerleading one side or the other, the Democrats have been the ones to at least talk about it. I think the Republicans are the party of non-governing, kind of maintaining the status quo for sure. I know Democrats have done that too. We had, hope and change in Obama, and, he didn't do anything that he promised. We have Obamacare, but that was a fraction of what we were all hoping for with universal healthcare, which is why we all voted for him. So speaking of why people vote for people, I have a clip here. I'm going to play, I think, 2 or 3 clips from David Smith's last episode, and kind of try to get into his head as to why he voted for Trump. I totally understand, I guess, the reason why. It's pretty obvious. But how people could trust what Trump was saying. So this coming from Dave Smith's own podcast here. We'll hear him speak, and then we'll talk about it.
Covering this war is that Donald Trump has drawn this out so long, and he lies so much in such a cartoonish way, to the point that his word means absolutely nothing, and he's repeated the same cycle over about 15 times now. Again, it's something out of it's not even a sitcom, it's a cartoon. It's he's declared victory 75 times, and announced we have a deal 63 times, and announced the strait is open at least a few dozen times, and like, so after a while covering it, it just gets boring.
Okay, so I definitely agree with him there. But the thing is, like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? That's like a saying. When, when someone's like 80 something years old and you have his entire career and life history to look at, you should understand and know that Trump at a fundamental level is a complete narcissist and liar. um, that's all he knows how to do is lie. He literally doesn't know how to do anything else in order to, further his career ambition or whatever Trump is going for. So when Trump says something that you agree with, and then when he brings people on board that you're like, oh, like Tulsi, Kash Patel, all these people that, are terrible now. But he really lied and surrounded himself with people that he thought could like edge him out with votes. So as soon as like you hear Donald Trump saying something that you agree with, like I remember on the debate stage, he looked Jeb Bush in the eyes and said, "Your brother lied us into war," and we all applauded. Like, that was great. He's saying these things in order to get elected because he just doesn't give a shit if there's war or if there's not war, if he's leading the charge or not. Whatever's in his own self-interest, he will do. So as soon as Trump says something that you agree with, alarms should be going off in your head. Like, I'm probably getting lied to, because he lies about everything, which is why I don't understand how he has a following. I call his following a cult more than, political party or a following or whatever, because it's hard for me to understand how you can follow someone when they say one thing and do another, and then when they say one thing and counter what they're saying the next day. It's really impossible for me to wrap my head around how he has any followers with 2 brain cells anymore. Or really, it's tough for me to say, but like how anyone could trust him and vote for him when he has an entire career of screwing people over, lying to people, not following through on his contracts or paying workers. There's just so many things about him and his career and his life and just who he is on the outside, you know what I mean? That should raise a lot of red flags, especially when he says something like, "Oh, I agree with that." He's lying just to get your vote. And it really makes me upset when people like Dave Smith, who they're smart, they know the political game, they know politics, they know how it's played, how he didn't see that, how he didn't see he was going to get lied to, how he's so shocked that we're in a war in Iran now, and that we're doing all these military actions overseas, when he was the president of, no more war. That's what he ran on. So, I'm just kind of confused. I want to get more into his head, like why he would vote for Trump. Like, he should know better. So, but the thing is, we didn't have a good alternative, right? Like Kamala Harris, she was just appointed by the DNC without a primary. So you're stuck between like a rock and a hard place there. I personally, and this is going to sound crazy, I might lose a whole bunch of followers, even though I have none right now. This is the very first episode. I voted for Jill Stein of the Green Party because I actually agreed with like 90-something% of what she was campaigning on, which is like overturning Citizens United, universal health care, getting money out of politics, cleaning up our industrial food complex system that's just totally broken. So, supporting small farmers. So all of that stuff I agree with. There was no way I was voting for Trump. No way. There was no way I was voting for Kamala, but I did want to exercise my right to vote my voice. So a lot of people, I don't agree with people when they say, when you vote third party, you're wasting your vote. Even though I do think in Ohio, this is kind of messed up, I do think in Ohio, she didn't get her vice president. She didn't establish her vice president in time or name them. And I don't think her votes were even counted in Ohio. So that did really suck. But we're talking this episode about a populist movement. And so just to get back into that before I play his next clip, why I don't think the right had a populist movement is because I said this earlier, that I think the right wing is the party of non-governing, like the Republicans just non-governing. The really only issues they care about are abortion and gun control. And I don't think gun control is going to change or go anywhere right now. That's kind of like the law of the land. And I think everyone is kind of just settled on the fact that this is just the culture that we live in here in America. If you want to live in America, that's kind of the rules. Everyone can get a gun. So when it comes to a populist movement, that's really a grassroots response to. I guess I can play this next clip here from Dave Smith, because he defines what populism is. And I think later in the episode, I don't think I'm going to play it, but he like defines what leftist populism is, which is like socialism and wokeness. That's what he describes left populism is. He never described what right-wing populism is. And I'll get into that after I play the clip as to like maybe why he didn't really have that thought. Oh, that's my dog. She might come down here soon. My fiance is with her friend having brunch. So it's just me here. So if she comes down here, if you hear a dog, that's Lily. She's deaf, but she might make an appearance or two. All right. So here we go. Here's the next clip. Let's see what he says about populism here.
We've really been living in a populist moment in America. Now, populism, for anyone who's not familiar with this lingo, is that populism is an awfully vague term. All it really means is that you're kind of on. You're on behalf of the working people, on behalf of the people against some type of corrupt elite. It's a vague term, populism. But the reason why people use it and the reason why it's useful is because, well, for someone like my age, you could certainly see why it's useful to describe the last 10 years as a populist moment.
Okay, so I agree with him. I would say the last 20 years have been a populist moment. Really, but he said the working class, like populism is, trying to get issues that the working class want, through and through the government and passed and heard. So he said the working class, and then he said to abolish or to eliminate corruption. So when you think of the working class, at least for me, and you think of, a party trying to end corruption, to me, that's at least the Democratic Party. They at least talk about it. They at least talk about universal health care from time to time. I did vote for Bernie Sanders in the primaries, both times. So when I think of populism, I just think of the left, and independence. I never really think of the right. And the why I put like in parentheses anymore, the right-wing populism doesn't exist anymore, is it kind of did when the left kind of went crazy with the woke culture. There was kind of a grass movement and the Tea Party, but, Trump hijacked the Tea Party. That's kind of another instance when the right was trying to get a populist movement going. So that was the Tea Party. And then also when the woke culture emerged on the left, that was their response to it, was this new populist movement going against that. I get it. I understand. Like, sorry, guys. She can't hear me talking just to come down and chill out. She probably thinks she's home alone. So yeah, so the right just really galvanizes against culture warfare. That's really when the right all come together. Kumbaya moment is when they get pissed off because of culture wars happening on the left. Now it's 2026, right? We're more than halfway through the year, which is crazy. Woke culture is dead. I guess you don't hear about it. People don't campaign on it. They don't run on it. So what really is the right doing that's populist whatsoever? They don't have a plan for healthcare. They don't have a plan for lowering cost of education. There she is. Hey, baby girl. Hopefully she just lays on the couch and doesn't dig. They don't have a plan for anything, really. So I really think that, my thesis, which is right-wing populism doesn't exist, is true, because Dave Smith brought up working class. Okay, what has the right ever done, or what message have they ever had in order to focus on making the working class, the middle class better? Honestly, what the right does is they're okay with, giving Israel billions of dollars every year, messing around in the Middle East when they quote unquote have to, right? When someone's, months away from getting a nuclear bomb, like Netanyahu has said decade after decade after decade, since I think like the late 80s. They're okay with that. And a lot of, throughout history, the Democrats were okay with that too. You can kind of see a major fracture, or a bigger fracture, in the Democratic Party, I think, because of the Israel uh, issue, right? We don't want to fund them anymore. We don't want them to not only fund them, but have them have control of our government, because we can see that pretty clearly in the decisions that our leaders are making. I thought there would be more of a fracture with the Republicans with Trump. A lot of people that are still Republicans don't like Trump, and I get it. He has a very, very small following, and I think MAGA is way different than your standard Republican, right? Standard Republican is just, don't take away our guns, pro-life, things like that. Very typical. Other than that, there's not really much there. And because there's not really much there's not really much for the population to rally against. It's like, yeah, these two things are pretty established. You have states like, here and there changing their, abortion laws and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's kind of settled. The left want to change things, and they're listening to the population more than the right. So yeah, that's kind of my reasoning to, defend the fact that right wing never had a populist movement. And that thesis kind of like sprung in my head when I was driving to visit my grandma. It's about 50 minutes or so. And I was really hoping that at some point in this podcast, he would define what right-wing populism is, because I was kind of confused. I'm like, okay, I see it spring up during, the woke stuff. I see it spring up during like the Tea Party. But after that, like, there's not really much there. And he said there's like, 10 years of the populist movement. I think there's more. I think it's double that. I think there's at least 20 years of the populist movement. You can see it just in the faces of the president, right? We had George W. Bush. Towards his latter years of being president, no one liked anything he was doing, right? So we went completely opposite. This was, years after 9/11, but not too long after that. Barack Obama, we elected the first African-American president, and his name was Barack Obama. I did vote for him. That was the first time I could vote, I think. Yeah. When I was in college, and he kind of did the same thing that Trump did. He talked a good game. Well, he talked a lot better than Trump. He was a lot more eloquent when he spoke, but he said what we wanted to hear. He had a populist message, right? His message was populist. We have gotten that same message from every president following him, right? Biden kind of, I think Trump went not so crazy. I mean, Trump's first presidency was a very straightforward Republican, 1990s, late 1980s term. It really was. Tax cuts for the wealthy. He didn't start any new wars, which was interesting. But he did the same thing that all Republicans do when they get there, right? They're friends with billionaires. They don't raise their taxes, and it's just same old, right? With COVID broke everything, right? People just wanted to go back to same old. That's how bad COVID was. We all wanted to go back to a year or two before COVID, because that looked so good, rose-colored glasses and all that. And that's what Biden represented. So I think just those 4 years with Biden were just a desire to return to some sort of normalcy, right? People didn't actually see, she can't hear me, so this is no in sign language, if you ever want to know. She knows sign language too. So I go, Lily, no. I'll show her at the end of the podcast. And I also have a funny little moment that I tried to start this podcast with. I'll throw that in at the end. I'll throw in some funny things at the end here and there. Oh shoot, now what was I talking about? I really wish this is why I had a producer or something. But I think I was talking about Barack Obama, his populist message. So COVID, people just wanted to go back to normal with COVID. Once that was all, because I'm not gonna lie, the 4 years of Trump, if it wasn't for COVID, he probably would have got elected again, right? People saw the mishandlings of that out the gate. And with Trump, people kind of knew better. Like, he's not gonna, like, we didn't really trust him to handle that. So we just wanted to go back to normal. We voted in Biden, and this is kind of what broke, for a little bit at least, the populist momentum in terms of like every single president we voted in, they've run on a populist message. Like, we're gonna change things. We're gonna look into, or we're gonna lower the cost of education, higher education. Go back to public, free public colleges, which they had before the Vietnam War, things like that. Universal healthcare was a big one. Lowering the price of groceries and everything after COVID, that was a big one too. So there was a populist message again that started, and that's why we got Trump, because the alternative was the most established neocon Democrat, that was appointed by the DNC. No one wanted that, right? That she had zero populist message, right? Kamala Harris had zero populist message. Trump turned the populist message to 11. He really did. So we had Kamala Harris, who was just appointed by the DNC, not talking to the populists, right? The populist message, not even a whisper. And then you had Trump yelling at it, yelling from the mountaintops, a populist message that people wanted to hear, and surrounding himself by people with also that populist message, right? Release the Epstein files was a big one too. Kash Patel, RFK Jr., like, we need to fix our broken food system. No more wars, right? Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, now she's not anymore the director of national intelligence, but she once was. And the very first thing she said was, Iran doesn't have, there's nothing I see, there's no evidence that I have, and I have the most evidence out of anyone, that I don't see any evidence that points to Iran having a nuclear weapon or trying to have a nuclear weapon. And then Trump just said she doesn't know what she's talking about. And now DNI stands for do not invite instead of director of national intelligence. So yeah, anyone that goes against Trump, will be knocked down, never to be heard from again. Because, when you say all of these things you don't mean, and you surround yourself with people that you don't really see eye to eye with, you're not really going to hear much from them, unless they just cave and crumble. I thought Tulsi should have resigned a long time ago. I think RFK Jr. should have done the same thing, but it seems like RFK Jr. is just like going with the flow of things. Kash Patel is just a fucking idiot. So yeah, that's what the populist message has become in Trump's presidency. We're in a war in Iran that seems more and more like a forever war. The Epstein files are still under lock and key. And with Pam Bondi and the whole botchery of that, like, we're more confused now than ever. So yeah, I'm just going to play a couple more seconds here of Dave Smith. I think I paused it where he was talking about, saying there's 10 years of populist messages and stuff like that. But I think there's been more. And then maybe if I have anything I can think of to wrap up this episode, I want these episodes to be about 25 to 30 minutes. Nothing too long. If you guys have comments, if you want me to talk about something, please comment below. I'm really here just for good ideas. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not Republican, I'm not Democrat, I'm not Libertarian. I think we do need some sort of governance. We need firefighters, policemen. I would like to include, hospitals and things like that in there. But I do think there needs to be some sort of buy-in when it comes to being a part of a country that you pay taxes for, that we all can benefit from, and change if we need to. So yeah, I don't know. I might get into that in another episode, but let's just see if he has anything else to say and if I think of anything else to wrap up this episode with. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you.
The Donald Trump campaigns, the Bernie Sanders campaign, the Mamdani campaign, the Ron Paul campaigns, these were distinctly populist campaigns, although they varied in terms of like the worldview of the candidates widely. But they were distinctly populist campaigns in a way that, like, Bob Dole running just wasn't. In a way that...
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree. And all those politicians that he said had populist messages are very, very popular still. Zoran Mondami, I'm glad you brought that up, is a perfect example of someone that just cuts through all the culture war bullshit, and just speaks to what the population want, right? When he was asked if he would go to Israel, all the other candidates raised their hand and said they would. He's like, why would I do that? I'm for here. To work for the people, my constituents in New York City. I'm going to stay here and do that. So Zoran Mondani has, and he actually puts action to his words. There's a lot of things that he's been doing that I think, in my opinion, has helped the city. But if nothing else, he's staying true to his word and actually trying to do what he's saying. So those politicians he brought up all have populist messages, and they're all more popular than ever. If the Democrats run someone like Pete Buttigieg or someone like that, it's just not going to happen. It's never going to happen for them. And it's been seen, minus those 4 years of COVID craziness, right? And we discussed this a little bit earlier. It's been seen that if you have a populist message and stick with that, and don't have like a muddied past or whatever, you stick with that populist message, you're going to do well. Unless the DNC, stab you in the back. I mean, Bernie has 2 knives in his back. And I was actually at the DNC in Philly when all that went down, and it was just the craziest thing. I can talk about that later. That was a pretty cool trip. But anyway, that's my take on the reason why I don't think right-wing populism exists. It's more in the left and independents. There were brief moments of it happening, but it either got hijacked, with the Tea Party, or it was just, from culture wars that the Democrats started, and who knows who started it. It's just to keep us off the issues that populists want to vote for. So anyway, thanks so much. I'm going to try to get these out at least once a month, or not once a month, maybe once a week. Every Monday morning, I'm going to try to release these. I do own a production studio, which is, part of why I have all this equipment, and a podcast. If you guys want to hear a more candid version of James, check out the Hangout Culture podcast. It's under at Inman Productions on YouTube, so you can check that out. But I'll see you every Monday with some political takes, maybe some pop culture stuff. I don't know. But basically, I want to open up the conversation to everyone below, so please leave a comment, subscribe, and like this video. I'll see you next Monday. Thanks. Now she's a good girl. Now she's good. Let's get the ribbon cutting ceremony over with here for the very first episode. Let's see. Never mind.